How's it going, everyone? Hey, this is Tim Laska, and you're listening to The Tim Laska Show. This is episode 71. Some of you out there are sitting there scratching your head going, I would love to start a podcast, but I don't know where to begin. I've got the answer, podcast coaching. Head on over to timlaskas.com under the coaching page and see the different packages that I have. I can help you if you're stuck and you've already started. I can help you if you haven't started and you don't know where to begin, you don't know the steps, you have some essential questions that need to be answered now. Time is money, so podcast coaching is the way for you. timlaskas.com under the coaching section. Now on to today's featured guest, who is Mitch Russo. Mitch understands business. He understands how to build a business and how to do it virtually, how to create $1 million company from like your bedroom or your garage. He understands systems. Mitch has done some incredible things. He's built companies. He's sold them. He's worked as CEO of some of the biggest companies out there. He was also CEO of one of Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes' business. You know Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins, yes, and Chet Holmes, very well known. He also has worked with Kevin Harrington, from Shark Tank, which is very fitting because this is Shark Week. So anyway, Mitch brings it. He brings great value. I'm so excited to have him on the show, so I know you're going to enjoy it. So sit back and enjoy.
The Tim Laska Show, in search of entrepreneurial gold. Tim digs deep into the minds of his guests. Entertaining, down to earth, and informative. Now, here's your host, Tim Laskas.
Hey, Mitch, thanks for being on the show today.
Tim, great to be here, man. So delighted to talk to you.
Hey, well, likewise. And you were just telling me that you're like a world traveler taking pictures of like landscapes and stuff. Like, tell the listeners a little bit about that.
Yeah, so you know what it is? It comes down to this. It could be landscapes. It could be the interiors of temples and churches. It could be people. My only guideline is it's got to be epic. If it's epic, I want in.
Well, how about I got some weeds and dirt in my backyard.
I can make it epic, baby.
Well, it sounds like you've been to you're traveling around in Asia and all over the world for this, looking for those epic photos, right?
Exactly. And if you want to see some of my work, it's a very easy URL. It's mitchrussotravels.com. Excellent.
Well, Mitch, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself professionally and what are you currently working on?
Sure. Well, I'll start with the first part of that question, and I'll go back a bit in time. So I was 16 years old. I started a rock band in high school. Because of my mindset, I approached it a lot differently than other kids. I basically built a business out of my rock band, and we became one of the highest paid rock bands back in the 70s. Just really amazing for us. We were making, and this is like in 1970, we were making $500 a gig, just 4 kids. In fact, we weren't even old enough to drive yet, so we had to pay somebody to haul us around. But the lessons I learned in that process really have served me well over many, many years. I actually call those lessons the basic wisdom of business, which came from having built that rock band from nothing. But then I went on and I started to do things like buy real estate, which I made money on, but I didn't enjoy. And then eventually what really was my breakout for me was building and starting a software company. So I was the founder of Time Slips Corporation, and I grew that substantially to 100 people and then sold it for 8 figures. And, sometimes I regret having sold it, but at the time it was exactly the right thing to do. And so I sold it, and I went on and I did some other cool things. I learned to be a professional options trader for a little while, which I still love today. But the next big thing for me was to hook up with my old friend Chet Holmes and Tony Robbins, and together we built Business Breakthroughs International. And we grew that from 0 to 25 million a year, and had plans to sell it and retire on the Malibu beach, et cetera. But my buddy Chet passed away of leukemia, and that sort of spoiled both of our plans.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
But you've had quite an adventure in life. I mean, you've done lots of amazing things, and just, up until recently, you're working with Chet and Tony Robbins. And How did you get involved in that, working with the two of them?
Well, Chet had been in sales all his life. And if you know Chet Holmes at all, if you don't know Chet Holmes, look him up on Amazon. His book is amazing. Chet and I knew each other because he was trying to sell me advertising when I built my software company. And he was very persistent. He didn't let up. He had me on his Dream 100 list, which I didn't understand until many years later. And when finally I did buy, if you will, I agreed to go in with him. It was after almost a year and a half of negotiation. So I got a very sweet deal. And the ads worked like magic back then. It was the perfect set of ads in the perfect market at the perfect time. And it increased sales 40% almost within 60 days. So we became, at that point, obviously, we became friends, and we stayed lifelong friends from about 1988 until the day of his death, where I was standing there in the hospital as he had basically spoken his last words. So I got to know Chet real well. We stayed friends after I sold the company. We've done business together after I sold the company. And one day he just asked if, in a normal Saturday afternoon conversation, if I could give him a hand with some of the stuff he was dealing with in his new company. And I said, yes, of course. And I did. And I ended up hiring his entire sales force and then building a recruiting division. And he asked me to be the president. And of course I said yes. And, I figured I could still trade options while I was helping Chet. And then we began negotiating with Tony Robbins. And that was really cool because, I'd been a fan of Tony. I'd bought his tapes, and I would actually say that at one point his materials had a huge impact in my life. But then we're on the phone every Thursday night for almost 6 months. We skipped a few Thursdays, but we were hammering out this contract. We really all three of us really wanted to do this. And we finally came together and we basically agreed. And then we were working on the final points of the contract on the morning of our event, of which 500 people showed up to hear Tony and Chet and 15 other guests together. And we called that the Ultimate Business Mastery Summit. And from that, we built a product called the Ultimate Business Mastery System. And that is what we sold along with our training, coaching, and consulting.
So you guys built this from the ground, and then, and that was the idea, was to build to sell?
No, the idea was to build to create an impact. And if we were maybe a little bit smarter, we would have thought about, maybe building it to sell. I'm sure Tony thought of that. I was just so thrilled to be working with Chet and Tony again, and to be on this wild ride with these amazing guys. Imagine having Chet Holmes and Tony Robbins as your business coach for 5 years. That's kind of what it was like for me. I'm a pretty smart guy and all, but I don't have what these guys have. But I loved the fact that I had access to them pretty much anytime I wanted. And it was a great experience doing that. And up until the point where Chet passed away, during the last year of Chet's illness, Tony and I worked very closely together. I put together a plan for Tony's to take the company forward. We had lined up a buyer at one point, so we knew what the company was worth. But after Chet died, things really changed a lot. It became difficult for me to stay on, and I did resign. And when I resigned, I called my old friend Jay Abraham. I said, Jay, what do I do? I have no list. I have no business. I have nothing. I don't even know what I know anymore, And he goes, well, look, Mitch, no matter what you do, you have to find a way to teach others what you know. And I said, okay, Jay, I guess I'll look for another job or something. And then later those words sunk in. And I said, I think what Jay was telling me was to write a book. And so that's what I did. And so I wrote a book. It's called The Invisible Organization. And the book is all about how I built BBI and ran it as a virtual company. And then, of course, what happens after you build a virtual company, all the superpowers you then have, being able to do things that other people just in brick and mortar companies just can't do.
God, there's so much rich information here. My mind is just kind of going all over the place, Mitch. Let me back up for a moment.
Of course.
Chet was very successful. And what was he like as a person behind the scenes, as a friend, as someone that you would just kind of hang out with and chat with? What was his personality like?
Well, Chet was a fun-loving guy. He was as they used to say on Saturday Night Live, he was a wild and crazy guy. And whenever we were together, we had fun. And I mean, the viewpoint Chet had, which I loved, I'll tell you a conversation that Chet and I had over the phone one day. And, we're talking about the business. The business is just gangbusters. I think Chet was putting about $250,000 a month in the bank. And he said to me, I think I'm going to buy another yacht. I said, but you already have one. What do you want another one for? He goes, yeah, this one's nicer and it's bigger. I said, well, is there something wrong with the one you got? And he goes, no, nothing wrong with it. I mean, and he had just bought a Rolls Royce too. So I said to him, well, of course, hey, buddy, if that's what you want. He goes, yeah, you know what it is? I got about $600K sitting in the bank. And if it's sitting in the bank, it's not doing me any good. I'd rather spend it and have some fun with it. I said, I understand, buddy. Of course, I'm the exact opposite. I salt away 20% of everything I make, and I think about retirement. So I'm almost the exact opposite of Chet when it came to that. And I admired him for understanding the flow of money more so than I did at that time.
Well, it sounds like he really enjoyed life and living and knew how to, use his money to do that and just have those experiences. And, what would you say today if he was still alive? What would you say to him?
First, I'd smack him in the face. I said, you son of a bitch, you bailed on me. That's the first thing I would do. And then I said, okay, well, now you're back. Let's get busy. We got work to do. And we got living to do, because I never really had a friend as good as Chet, and we had so much fun together. And look, there was a dark side to Chet too. I won't lie. And maybe there's a dark side to all of us, but for Chet, sometimes it was a little close to the surface. And, Chet was plagued with demons, just like many of us are. And Chet's demons meant that if you hit him at the wrong angle, if you happen to show up on a day when he wasn't in a good place, he can get pretty snappy with people. And I've seen it happen, and it's happened to me. And I've had to make it clear that, we're friends first. And if this is the way you're going to talk to me, then you better find someone else to run your company, because you don't get to talk to me that way. And so we've had a few of those conversations. And it got really hard towards the end when his sickness really kicked in. And he started to understand that he was close to death. And I got that phone call after I thought he was recovering, when he said to me, look, I'll probably be dead by Monday. So my daughter is here, my wife is here. Let's try to get an understanding of exactly what's going to happen after I'm gone. And I teared up, of course. That was a tough moment. But we really got down to business and talked. And that was my friend Chet. I mean, he was really there. He loved his family. He was there for his family first all the time. He adored his wife and his children. And, we were there together throughout this entire process.
Well, he sounds like just a great person. And, what was Tony Robbins like? I'm sure a lot of people, listening right now are, thinking, wow, what was Tony like? He's physically, he's kind of like this, he's almost like, he seems like 10 feet tall, but, what's his personality like behind the scenes? He's always so outgoing, energetic, and just kind of in your face. And when I see him, I get pumped up, but I'm thinking, my God, that's got to be draining. What was he like just as a friend talking on the side?
He is an inspiration in every element of his life. He surrounded himself with some amazing people, a wonderful Sage is a wonderful wife, and from every aspect, I love the way she supports him. And, Tony is a person who is as real one-on-one as he is on stage. Obviously, he doesn't speak as loud. Well, sometimes he does, but and he doesn't jump up and down, and he doesn't do that. I mean, that's obvious. That's a stage thing. But his enthusiasm for life is there every minute of the day. His attention to you when he's speaking with you is there. And he is so understanding of the way people work that he's able to get to the heart of matters very quickly. So besides being smart, he's actually wise. And it's the wisdom that Tony Robbins has accumulated over his lifetime and maybe more than others at the same age, that give him an edge, I think, that no other person, very few people really have. And he's that way, either in person, one-on-one, or in a group.
Well, his passion really comes through any type of video or an audio or anything kind of, medium that I, see or hear him on. It's just his passion for life, his passion for helping people. You can feel it. You just get a sense in your core, like, this guy cares.
He does. He cares about people. He says he feeds, not that I would doubt it, I'm sure he does. He feeds somewhere around 1 million people a year with his programs. And I remember once we were chatting on the phone, he says, "What are you doing this weekend?" I said, "Well, I'm going to be going to a local church here, and we're going to be feeding everybody for Thanksgiving. And then we're going to meet back at my sister's house and have a great Thanksgiving together." He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to be doing something like that too." I said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He goes, "Well, we're feeding about 1 million people." So I said, "Okay, Tony, I guess you beat me. I'm not going to compete with that." But, that's the way he is. He's just so generous. And he thinks about people all the time. And he thinks about how he can help people all the time. And I love that about him.
Yeah. Well, you have this rich experience of running these companies, building a company, selling a company, and just, out there living and breathing sales and marketing and all of this stuff. What are a couple of tips that you would have for some of the listeners who are kind of new entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who are ready to throw their hat in the ring and have build their own brand and service and products and all that stuff?
Sure. Well, I work with entrepreneurs all the time. And, I've gotten to the point now where it's so easy to spot someone. I mean, within 5 or 10 minutes of chatting, I could tell who is going to be successful and who's not. And some of the distinctions that I think might be worth chatting about are the way people view life and the way people view their mission. And let me give you some ideas of what I mean. When I'm chatting with somebody and they're telling me about their business, what I'm listening for is I'm trying to understand whether they truly understand the customer that they are trying to offer a service or a product to, and whether they have taken the time and done the work to interview those types of customers. I don't mean 10 or 5 or 3, I mean lots, and gotten feedback on whatever it is they're going to offer before they do it. So before you offer a product to anyone for any reason, ideally, what you want to do is find people who want that product, know exactly what it is that they need. And if that need is not there, or if that need isn't strong enough, then you find something else that you want to offer. But the bottom line is never go into a business because you have a great idea for a product, because a product without a market is a disaster. And a market with the wrong product is even worse, because that means you're going to keep trying to sell the wrong product to maybe the right market, but ideally that's not going to work, and you should try and restructure. So that's what I look for when I chat with people. I want to know what their passion's about. I want to know whether they truly understand the customer, and I want to know whether they have vetted the product to the point where they truly understand what the customer really needs and wants.
And that seems like a kind of a big area that people struggle with initially is, they come up with these ideas and they say, "Oh, I know what would be great. I know what people want," but it's really what they want. And,
Right.
And they think, "Well, I would use this, or I would do that, or I would need that service." And a lot of times it could be a mess.
That's right. Did you ever hear the old joke about the guys walking down the street and it's nighttime, and there's a woman who's looking at the ground, and she's almost on hands and knees searching the ground, and it's right under a street light. And so he walks over to her and he says, "Excuse me, did you lose something? Can I help you find something?" And she says, yes, thank you. I lost my keys." So he says, "Well, where did you drop them?" He goes, "Well, I think I dropped them back there by the door frame." And he says, "Well, why are you looking here?" And she says, "Well, because the light's better here." I mean, the point of that story is that if you're looking for a solution in the wrong place simply because it's convenient, then ideally you're never going to get where you want to go. So my advice is go back and look for the keys in the dark and find out, map out every area, understand exactly what's going on, and discover what your client truly needs and how to get it to them.
Now, can you give any examples of maybe how to tailor those questions that they may ask their customers? Let's say someone purchased a product or a service. How many questions should they ask, and what kind of questions should they be?
Well, you're making the assumption that they've already built the product and they've already put it in the hands of customers. Is that right? Is that we want to go on that assumption?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. So I'll tell you what I did. And I'm not saying I do it right or did it right, but when I built my software company, I was an outsider entering an established market. And at what I was doing is I was building time and billing software for lawyers and accountants. And I was neither a lawyer or an accountant, and I had never been in the software business before. But I did know that, and I was very passionate about being successful in building a company. So my partner and I did a lot of research, and we understood the time and billing software marketplace really well. But we weren't that familiar with what customers wanted. We just knew we could do something really cool in the software space. And that was a mistake. So what we did is we built something really cool. And then what we did is we found lawyers in chat rooms and user groups at the time, and we got their feedback. And a lot of their feedback was, hey, this doesn't meet my needs. So we worked for several months discussing with real users, and I would say almost 200 real users, which we distributed our software free to almost 200 or more than 200 lawyers at the time, and got an enormous amount of feedback. And finally, when we released version 1.1 of our software, it had completely been modified to meet the needs of our target clients. In fact, we had done such a good job that other companies who we were rivals with all of a sudden were coming to us and wanting to buy our company. And we had basically just gotten started.
Wow. But your ideal strategy would be, before you ever jump into it, is test the market out before you go there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, another story about my ex-wife. She came to me one day and she goes, I want to buy into this MLM, multi-level marketing thing. And I said, great. I think you'd be good at that. Why don't you take a look at it and see what it is? And so she takes a look at it. And next thing I know, she's setting up an office upstairs. She's buying furniture and she's installing a new phone line. And I say, honey, did you try and sell any of this stuff yet? She goes, oh, no, that'll come next. I said, I know this sounds crazy, but maybe we should try and sell some of the stuff that you're interested in selling before we go and spend money on the stuff surrounding a business. What do you think of that? She says, no, don't worry, I'll be able to do it. And of course she couldn't. I mean, and it's not because there was nothing wrong with her. It was just because it wasn't a fit for who she was. So what I try to do, and particularly when I advise entrepreneurs, is I say, you know what? I don't even care if you've built it yet. Try and sell it first and tell me how you do. And then once you start to sell it, find out why people didn't buy it. Find out what was wrong with your proposition and see if you can go back and try it again, having reshaped it after the time you spent trying. And this, to me, has worked really, really well in understanding what people want before you try and sell them.
Wow, great story and an excellent strategy, and one for the listeners that I hope that they pay attention to, because it's going to help them along, the way to become more successful and not just kind of, find themselves flat on their face and going, I guess this wasn't, meant to be. Let me rush back to my job.
Yeah, I've invested in over 20 companies as an angel investor. And here's the thing I learned. I had to learn it the hard way, but here's the thing I learned. I learned that if a group of people cannot figure out how to make money without investment capital, then in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, they won't figure it out after they have investment capital. So the point is that if you don't understand your market, if you don't have a product that you can sell, if that product is not needed in the marketplace, if for some reason it doesn't appeal to your target marketplace, even if you think they need it, then something's wrong. and you need to go back before you spend a lot of money, yours or investors' money, and fix it. And that's really all I'm really talking about here, is do that basic research in understanding your market, understanding what your customer truly wants, and more importantly, understanding the business model. A simple idea would be, don't sell somebody something before you understand what you're going to sell them next. You know, I made this mistake. Even now, I still make mistakes, and that's one of them. I came out with this. It was a labor of love. I wrote a book. It's called The Invisible Organization, and I thought, oh my goodness, this has been so much fun writing it. It's taken 3 years, 2 rewrites, countless hours editing, and I released the book. But guess what? I didn't have anything to follow up with it on. What I should have done, and what my next book will do, is I will release a book that has a course. And I will offer, after they buy the course, I will offer coaching. And after I offer coaching, I'll offer a mastermind. And after I offer a mastermind, I'm going to offer a retreat. So never offer to sell anything unless you are already set up for the next thing they're about to buy.
Great strategy. I love that. That's what we're looking for. And I'm sure the listeners are eating this up. Now, Mitch, you built and sold a company that was worth over 8 figures. What keeps you motivated? I mean, you've already achieved an enormous amount of success in many people's eyes. I don't know about yourself as far as how you view it, but for most people looking, at you, they were going, wow, that's incredible. So what keeps you motivated after doing all these things?
Well, it's a great question. I remember at 44 years old, I had moved back from Dallas, Texas, where I had run the company that bought my company as chief operating officer. I had millions and millions in the bank. And I also had a new baby. So my 4-year-old daughter, we were all in the house together. And my wife says to me, well, what are you going to do now? And I said, I don't know. I guess I'm retired, I think. I maybe go out and take some pictures or whatever. And that lasted, I'm going to say, a solid 6 weeks until I was basically batshit crazy out of my mind. I absolutely could not stand not being in the stream, in the flow, in the river of life, of opportunity, of entrepreneurship, and the excitement that goes along with that. So at that point, I decided that I was going to go out and find a job. And I thought to myself, hey, who wouldn't hire me? I mean, I just sold my company. I just did this. I'm such a hot shit. My goodness, anybody would want me, right? Wrong. Turns out I started sending resumes to venture capital firms, and the crickets were the loudest thing I heard back. No one even returned a phone call. And I finally got somebody on the phone. I said, I don't understand. What do I got to do? I mean, I just built a company from scratch. I just sold it. I didn't take a penny of investors' money. I was completely and 100% profitable almost from day one. And now I want to do this for some of your portfolio companies. Why won't you hire me? And they said, Mitch, you're kind of old. I mean, 44 years old. It's kind of over the hill when it comes to internet CEOs, And I said, wow. I understand. I'm too old. Right. So I laughed to myself at that point, and I said, I'm never going to change their mind about that. But what I did do is I started attending angel capital meetings, and I started investing in small companies. And what I found is that most of these companies that I was investing in needed my help. So I started getting involved in each of these companies. And at the time, it was 19 companies that I invested in, and I started helping them. And I found that now I was being sought out for my assistance as much as my money, or even more so than my money. Now I was being hired by venture capital firms to try and untangle the strategy of some of their failed portfolio companies. And that's when I really discovered how much I love helping people and helping companies. And I never stopped doing that. Even though I was working full time, I always had people I mentored or people that I helped coach on the side. And truly, that was the way I mean, at this point, my goal is to have the biggest impact on people and on life as I can. And if I can do that through others, then I'm happy to do it. So I have some clients now, amazing people who have the potential to have worldwide effect on others, and I want to help them do it. That's my goal. So do I have to have worldwide effect on others? No. I have had the effect that I've had, and now my goal is to make others as successful or more successful than I've ever been. And that's what I want to do today.
Mm-hmm. Now, who do you look up to as a business leader?
Well, I mean, I already talked about two of the people I look up to. And when I say I look up to, I mean, these guys are still, they're still the people, even though Chet's gone, I still study his material every day. And Tony, I mean, I still work with Tony. Just recently got off of a contract job that I did for Tony, building a radio campaign for him. So, I mean, the people I look up to are the people that I know have wisdom. One of the guys who I really love learning from is a guy named Perry Marshall. I don't know if you know who Perry is.
No.
But Perry is a guy that you should take a look at his website. He's a pretty smart guy. He has that elusive wisdom thing that I like so much. But I also get to meet and learn with other people and other partners. Jay Abraham has been a mentor, if you will, for years. And recently I began working with one of his partners, Carlos Diaz, who's the former CEO of Adidas and Speedo Latin America. Brilliant strategist, great entrepreneur, and I'm helping him with a project as well. So those are the people I love talking to because of their worldview. And, I could say names like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, but those are not people I have access to. So I like to learn from people I have access to because it makes me more interested in their lives, and that's essential for me.
Yeah, and there's a theme, you are who you hang out with, and if you're hanging out with those who are more successful or as successful as you, it really just kind of counteracts, you guys just kind of feed off of each other. And so many new entrepreneurs out there are not hanging around the right people. They don't have the right influence. They're kind of surrounded by people who just maybe bring them down. Is there anything you could kind of add to help them to break out of that and build their network?
Well, yeah. First of all, I think you said it right. You really are the core sum of the top 5 people that you spend your time with. And if you spend your time with people who are playing small, who are afraid, and who are negative, then unfortunately that's where your fate lies. On the other hand, if you reshift some of that and start following and working with people who are productive, smart, enthusiastic, love their lives, and are open to helping people and others, then that's what you're going to start adapting. And, for heaven's sakes, whoever you are listening to this, go find yourself a coach. I mean, we're entrepreneurs. This is a lonely life. And the thing about a lonely life as an entrepreneur is that our thoughts tend to get louder than they should. And some of us have thoughts that are just not particularly productive and aren't supportive of what we really want. So get yourself a coach. Get yourself someone who can see the bigger picture and help you navigate through all of the detail, the baloney, if you will, and get to the meat of the matter, and then really build on that.
Has there been a situation, business-wise, that really impacted you mentally, where you just felt like this is breaking me down, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I'll tell you about a time. Well, truthfully, there's been more than one. I'll tell you about a time when it really took some faith. And this goes back to the time slips days. We were, the way the software business used to work is that we sold the product. We had retail distribution. We had 5,000 retail locations selling our product. We had an active user base, but we were growing, and we were growing very fast. And growing fast means you need cash. And the way we got cash back then is we would release an upgrade. And in the later years, we'd release an upgrade and it would literally generate millions of dollars flowing into the company in a very short period of time. So we would build and spend at the rate knowing that an update or upgrade was coming. But we had an upgrade, but it wasn't ready, and it was late, and it was getting later. And we were basically at the point where we were running out of cash. And at that point, we had a bank line of credit. We had basically extended that. It was pretty much gone. And payroll was coming up. And my CFO came to me, my partner came to me and says, what are we going to do? I said, Neil, this is my partner, Neil. I said, Neil, pull out your wallet. Let's get our credit cards and let's make payroll. And the CFO says to me, you're out of your mind. What are you trying to do here? I said, we have a company that is going to be successful, and I will be damned if we shut this company down or if we miss a payroll. It's not going to happen. And they said, well, what do you mean? How are we going to get revenue? I said, we'll worry about that as soon as we get payroll covered. So we pulled out our credit cards, and at the time, our payroll was about, it must have been about $75,000 or $80,000. And of course, Neil and I, we didn't take a paycheck that week or that period, and we funded payroll with our credit cards. And literally the next week, we received like a 6-figure order from one of our distributors, and that was that. And then from there, a few weeks later, we released our upgrade, and it was a massive success. So that was a hard situation, but it required faith. It required deep understanding of what our current situation was. And by understanding our current situation, we were able to take the risk and do the right thing.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, you had such a strong vision and a belief, and you knew it was going to work out, and so you doubled down and went for it, and that is great. And what would you say has been kind of the most fulfilling moment of your entire kind of entrepreneurial journey through all these different companies?
Well, I won't lie. Getting a check for $3 million as a down payment was a lot of fun, particularly when I had $1,800 in the bank at the time. So my net worth was entirely wrapped up in my company. And
wow.
So I must say that, having built a situation where we brought 2 buyers to the table, and I did this all by myself. I probably was stupid doing it myself. I tried to get help, but the help at the time was incompetent, so I took over and did it myself. I found 2 buyers. I brought them to the table. I set up a Chinese auction. I hope that's not wrong to say about the Chinese. I love them, but I think you get the point.
Sure.
And we basically put them head to head, and the outcome was basically in our hands. So it was that moment in time that we agreed to sell the company to Sage at the amount we did, and with the upside potential that we did. We received a full cash offer from another company, but we received a offer from Sage for about 2/3 of what we were asking, but a 50% bump on the asking price if we were to perform over the course of the next 2 years. So again, this takes confidence in your market, confidence in your processes, confidence in your ability to have created a machine that makes money. And then I did. And so what I did is I said, I'll turn down the all cash offer and I'll take the upside offer instead. And that means me having to move my family and all of my executives and salespeople to Texas to do it. And I did. And we maxed out the upside of that offer because I knew what was coming. I knew what we were worth, and I knew my markets and my products.
Mitch, you just have some fantastic stories. I love listening to you talk, and I could probably go on for days. We could have part 1, part 2, part 3, and on and on and on. But unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. But before we go, tell the listeners where they can find you online and on social media and your website and all that great stuff.
Sure. Well, let me just mention, if it's okay, I have a podcast show.
Yes.
Okay. I interview people like me. I interview people who have what I believe is the wisdom that I think we need to learn from. And my podcast is called YourFirst1000Clients.com. And the purpose of my podcast is to serve entrepreneurs who are already in the game or getting started in the game itself. And when I mean the game of business. So if you're a wantrepreneur, sure, listen in, it might be fun. But if you're already in the game, then you're going to learn something every interview. And some of the people I bring on the show are frankly people that I probably would have never had access to just 10 or 20 years ago. So the idea of the podcast is to help you as an entrepreneur. And I love making sure that you are getting help. And I love the feedback I'm getting. So that's really the best place to go is yourfirst1000clients.com. And then there's my personal website, which is mitchrusso.com. And they call that an authority website at this point. And really what it is it's just sort of a place where all of my activities are pretty much available for people to see.
That's incredible. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Mitch Russo. Go to mitchrusso.com, or you can hear his podcast, yourfirst1000clients.com. Is it also on iTunes, Stitcher?
It sure is. It sure.
Yeah, all those great places. And then your book, you have the Amazon #1 bestseller, The Invisible Organization. So for everyone, be sure and check that out. Mitch, thank you again. You've been fantastic. I look forward to following you on your journey.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Want more entrepreneurial tips? Go to timlaskas.com.